Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we are diving into another classic, the Intel Core i7-4930K. Released way back in 2013, this processor was a beast, or in other words, 3930K's younger brother. But how does it hold up in modern games in 2024? Let's find out as we test it across 6 different games. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. Before we jump into the benchmarks, let's quickly go over CPU. Here we have the i7-4930K, who was released 2 years after 3930K, way back in 2013. This CPU came with the same count of cores, threads and even same TDP of 130 watts. Also, this CPU was based on same LGA 2011 socket, because it's the same X series processor, but with smaller process node of 22 nanometers. Also, 4930K was based on Ivy Bridge E architecture instead of Sandy Bridge E. Oh yeah, and 4930K have higher base clock speed of 3.4 GHz and turbo of 3.9 GHz. But of course, there is one big catch with turbo frequency, and the big catch is that 3.9 GHz is only possible for single core, and if you want turbo boost for all cores, then you will get only 3.6 GHz, same as me. Well, because I chose to synchronize boost across all cores, not just single core. And also, I paired i7 with 1080 Ti and 32GB of DDR3 memory, so the RAM and GPU wouldn't be a bottleneck. But now, I will stop with boring stuff and go straight to the games and benchmarks. First up is Forza Horizon 5. This car game is known for its demanding graphics and open world racing experience. i7 managed to run Forza at 1080p in high settings preset and with FXAA turned on. 4930K managed to maintain an average of 96 FPS, where minimum was 79.8 and maximum was 108.9 frames per second. I'd say not too shabby for a CPU that's over a decade old. I had a good feeling about 4930K's performance, so next up I launched Call of Duty Warzone, one of the most CPU intensive games out there. This will be a real test for i7-4930K, and Warzone I managed to run in 1080p with basic graphical preset. The i7 hit an average of 78.5 FPS, where minimum just under 60 and maximum was 96.7 FPS. I will say, the game was playable and CPU was strong enough to maintain stable frame rate even in intense fights, which is impressive considering the game's demands. Moving on to a Shadow of the Tomb Raider, my favorite game for testing old hardware, and as expected, i7 ran Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 1080p in highest preset, with anti-aliasing set to SMAA 4X just fine, and for maximum performance I ran game in DirectX 12, and here I saw an average of 100.3 frames per second, minimum was 55.5 FPS and maximum was 158.7 frames per second, and here not much else to say. Processor ran game very smooth, without any major FPS drops. Now onto something a bit different, Kingdom Come Deliverance. This game is surprisingly demanding on CPU when you crank up the settings, and 4930K managed to run game with high preset at 1080p and even with anti-aliasing set to SMAA 1X. i7-4930K gave an average of 82.7 FPS, minimum was 24.3 FPS and maximum was 124.1 FPS. In this game, major FPS drops was when you looked or started walk through the village center, but otherwise game runs surprisingly good in high preset. Next up, I run game that is mostly based on CPU performance, and that game is not other than Dota 2. Of course, here I cranked settings to the maximum, and of course motion blur and VSync turned off and in 1080p. And Dota's average FPS was 178.6, where minimum was stable 131.1 FPS and maximum was 224.4 FPS. The i7-4930K manages to deliver a solid experience here. Dota runs so smooth that I even for some time managed to enjoy this game. But for real guys, how in the god's goodwill you can enjoy MOBA games? I will never never understand. But finally, we are at the last game, good old Apex Legends. Can you imagine? This game is already 5 years old. Besides game's age, I run Apex in high settings at 1080p. And CPU achieved an average of 127.3 FPS, minimum just 95.2 and maximum of 144.8 FPS, proving that it can keep up with fast-paced battle royale games. And if you will dial down settings a bit, then you could for 100% play Apex competitively with this old X series i7. But now, couple of benchmarks, so you can compare this processor score. And the first benchmark is 3D Mark CPU profile. I set run for max threads, and i7's score was 2875 points. But next, I wanted to run Cinebench R23, but of course the CPU is so old that it doesn't support AVX2 instruction, so I sticked with Cinebench R23, and CPU score in multi-core test was 5052 points, but in single-core test CPU scores 688 points. For multi-core test 4930K just demolishes 3930K, but in single-core test 4930K get just 7 points higher than 3930K. Of course, if I would set bias to turbo boost for only single core, then yeah, score would be higher, but in real life you would like to sync all cores to same turbo frequency. But other than that, I'd say that 4930K is not a very big upgrade from 3930K, but maybe the CPU overclocks easier and higher. Who knows? But stay tuned and subscribe. Maybe I will try to overclock i7-4930K and compare performance with previous generation. And in the end, I just want to say that Core i7-4930K for me still holds its ground in 2024 by delivering decent performance across variety of games. While it may not compete with the latest CPUs, it's still a solid choice for budget-conscious gamers or those with older Xeon systems looking for upgrade. But if you found this video interesting or even helpful, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what you think of the i7-4930K. But for now, subscribe for more old CPU reviews and benchmarks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.